Coach, good morning. We'll let you start off with a few comments, talk about a little bit about your wide receiver room, and then we'll go to questions.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, Steve. All right, I'm still trying to get used to this, so excuse me if I feel or look a little awkward. But anyway, start things off. Just got done with practice number 3 of the week versus Wisconsin. Things are looking really positive. I think we have a really solid game plan put together. For Wisconsin, obviously a tough opponent coming in here. They're trending in the right direction. They're playing good football, and so are we. So I feel like it's going to be a really good matchup. There's going to be some interesting matchups in between positions, starting with the receivers, obviously against their defensive backs. They're really challenging in what they do and how they approach the game of football. Very similar to us, different style, but very similar as far as they're very disciplined, coach very well, play hard, play physical. So the challenge for us is just executing at a high level. And I think for the most part we've been trending in the right direction in our room. Starting about the whole season, kind of a recap for our position in the whole season. Things started off pretty slow. Started the season off with quite a few injuries. It's pretty challenging when you look out there as a position coach and you see, one or two scholarship guys starting off the first game of the season. You got one or two scholarship guys out there. It makes it a little tough. But you know what? Didn't flinch. The guys stepped up. Guys like Alec Wick, stepped right in there. Jack Johnson, they stepped right in there and allowed us to go out and compete and have a chance to win some games. So I'm really proud of those guys. And then, guys coming back off of injuries early on in the season, guys like Brody, Nico, really did a good job of doing what they were told, following directions, from the training staff and the strength staff, just making sure they were staying on protocol and, doing what they need to do to get them back available. And, back we're pretty much close to full strength and really feeling good about the room and about the offense and about the team moving forward. So that's really my kind of my brief synopsis on where we're at as a receiver room. But I'm sure you guys have plenty of questions, so I'll open it up at this time.
All right, we'll go to Scott Docterman. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, Kelton, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing, Scott?
I'm doing well. I wanted to ask you just kind of about this crazy journey of this season, because your first 2 games, only Arlen was your only scholarship guy, that was really available. I mean, I think Brody played maybe 1 snap in each of those games. But
yep.
How limiting was that for you as a coach to try to put some sort of game plan together? I mean, you didn't even have a 3 receiver package, I think, the first 2 games. And how has your unit been able to grow as they've been able to become more healthy?
Well, absolutely, it's a challenge. But you know what, Scott? That's a great question, first off. Second off, every day is a challenge. No matter if you're fully healthy or if you got all your guys hurt or if I'm feeling great today or if I'm feeling under the weather, there's always going to be a challenge. And that's part of life, just like football, right? And that's what I love about our beautiful game of football. And that's what I express to my guys all the time is the fact that, yes, starting off, things were challenging. Things were looking a little grim. There was a lot of noise outside the building, from certain individuals and people that, quite frankly, in my mind, don't matter, about, what we need to be doing or what we should be doing. And this guy should be getting more targets. None of that stuff matters, right? There's always going to be a challenge in life and in the game of football. And I commend my guys, right? Because they, like I said before, they stepped up. Guys like the guys you just mentioned, Alec Wick and Jack Johnson, they stepped up. Arlen Bruce, he held it down, right? He was the first game, he was the only scholarship receiver out there playing. And, we had him out of position, quite frankly. We had him playing in spots that we wouldn't put him in. But that's what needed to be done to help Iowa win football games. And that's what we did. And that's kind of our charge as receivers. We're going to pick up the slack wherever it need to be, right? So if we're going into a game plan where we're expecting to be the highest targeted position group in the room, we're going to step up to the challenge. If it's on the flip side of it, where we need to run the ball to be successful and make sure we win the game, we're going to step up to the challenge. And that's kind of been our charge pretty much since I've been here, but especially this year. New year, new challenges, new faces and all that stuff. But the message is still the same, right? It's about handling adversity and how well can you not only handle adversity, but learn something from it and improve while you're learning something from that adversity. And that's something that I'm really proud of. I'm kind of braggadocious about it, but I'm really proud of our guys for doing so. And the challenge continues. Like I said at the beginning, right? We got a really tough opponent coming here, being Wisconsin this week. And, they're really good. They're really good on defense, and it's going to be a challenge in every facet of the game. But we've stepped up so far, and I don't expect anything different come Saturday.
Kennington Smith.
Morning, Coach. Appreciate you taking the time to speak with us this morning.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask you about Deontay. Seems like there's just a lot of trust in him, both from the coaches with high snap counts, and Spencer's targeting him a lot since he's been back into the fold. How would you just describe his progression and development, even when he was injured, to where he was able to step in and play a big role?
The first word that comes to mind when I talk about Deontay is persistence. This young man has been through so much. Talking about adversity, here goes that word adversity again, right? This young man has been through so much adversity even before he got to Iowa, which I'm not going to get into his personal life at all. But this young man has faced adversity at every turn, it seems like. And then when he got to Iowa, here we go again with some more adversity. And most of it, just like in real life, again, here we go. Most of it was out of his control. Injuries, issues back home, this, that, or the other. And this young man just continued. And I give him the highest praise, because there were times where I was like, man, I was starting, my faith was starting to be challenged a little bit for him, right? Wondering if this young man was going to be able to push it through with all the stuff that was going on in his life from a personal standpoint. And this guy just kept showing up every day, and he's still the same guy. He's still the same guy this many years later, now that he's getting to play. Whether he's playing this year or whether it was 2 years ago when he had an Achilles, he was still the same young man showing up every day with a smile on his face. Ask him how he's doing. Deontay, you all right? You good? You need anything? Coach, I'm good. Coach, I'm good. And that's just the kind of young man he is. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention his mom. She's one of my favorite people on this earth. Joyce, she's outstanding. She has a heart of gold. And you talk about adversity, she's been through some tough things too. So when they say the apple don't fall far from the tree, it's pretty accurate when it comes to Deontay and his mom. They're great people, and whenever he's done playing, I see great things in Deontay's future, just because of the type of person and how he was raised and how he goes about his life. He's a tough-minded person, right? And you're talking about football. To me, that's the last piece of the puzzle. He's obviously really skilled. He's very athletic, can do a lot of things. We've just what you guys have seen, what the media, what the fans have seen from Deontay is a small, very small piece of his repertoire. Hopefully, sooner than later, for all of us, sooner than later, we'll start to see some of his skill set really open up, because this young man can do a lot. If you don't believe me, go and watch his high school film.
All right, John Steppe, go ahead.
Hi, Kelton. Good to see you.
Great to see you, John. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
So has what Charlie Jones has done at Purdue, has that come up in recruiting? And if so, how do you answer that from recruits?
Oh, I had a feeling I was going to get a question about that young man. With all due respect to him and to you, John, and anybody else who has a question about him, I really have no interest in talking about anybody outside of our building. All of my interest, all of my time, all of my effort and energy is invested in the young men here that are Iowa Hawkeyes, and we wear the black and gold. So, I wish anybody the best at other places. But as far as myself in the room, as far as recruiting, it's a challenge. It really is a challenge recruiting receivers here. There's a mantra or like this kind of this hidden message about Iowa receivers. If you come to Iowa, all you're going to do is block, and they line up in 12 personnel and 22 personnel, so they only put one receiver on the field, which anybody who's really paying attention, that really knows football, know that is not the case. We've been balanced offense for five years straight. We'll see how the numbers play out for my 6th year here. But since 17 all the way up through 2021, we've been a very balanced offensive attack, and I don't see that changing. Like I said before, the challenges with the numbers, health-wise, and things like that, obviously, kind of set us back a little bit. But as far as production, we're still here. We're still ready to produce. So it takes a special young type of man. I will say this, and I want this to be heard. It takes a special type of young man to come here and play football. Period. Right? It takes an even more unique individual to come play receiver at Iowa, because of the demands that we're going to put on you. All of those things I just mentioned about the voices outside the building that's telling this telling these young men that, you're only going to block and you're not going to get an opportunity and stuff like that. It takes a special type of young man to block that noise out, focus on what's truly important, right, and focus on what they can control, which is their attitude and effort. As long as we get those type of young men continue to come in here and contribute, we'll be just fine. If we start looking outside of that and start reaching and trying to find young men that don't fit that mold, then we'll find ourselves in trouble, and I'll be looking for a job. But as long as I stay guided on that path and finding those type of young men, we'll be just fine.
Chad Lysico?
Arland in the summer really was talking up Jacob Bostic, and I know he was dinged up early. What is his progression like, and could he get on the field this year in a contributing role?
Absolutely. I mean, he's really close. He was really close coming out of camp, to be honest with you, because of the lack of numbers that we were talking about going into that first game out of training camp. And unfortunately, he was one of the ones that ended up getting caught in the fray with those injuries. So he wasn't even available. Otherwise, this conversation might be going a little different right now, because he probably would have played a lot in that first game. And who knows what would have happened moving forward. So he was a young man that was part of that rehab and, meeting and getting his rehab done with the athletic training staff. So he is just now getting back in the fold. He's full speed, full strength, and all that stuff. And he's basically practicing in a backup role. But I agree with Arlen and anybody else who was at practice watching this young man that he has the tools. He's exactly what we thought coming out of high school. Coach Wallace did a good job identifying him. We went and evaluated him, and, he has the tools. He's got the size, speed. His catch radius is ridiculous. I mean, go down the list. So it's just a matter of me doing my job and making sure we continue to develop this young man, not putting too much on his plate too fast. And I don't see that being a challenge for him, because, quite frankly, he's very bright, very smart young man, picks up football very naturally and very quickly. So it's just a matter of me getting him the opportunities to do so. It just hasn't happened so far this season. But, according to what I know, we still have 3 games scheduled, and then who knows what happens after that. But, yes, he's a young man that definitely, as long as he keeps working and keeps improving, he's definitely a young man that has a chance to have a bright, bright future here at Iowa.
Tom Kakert?
Hey, Kelton. Good to see you.
Great to see you.
Wanted to ask you about Nico. It seems like since he looks like he's back to being Nico again, that the offense has picked up. Is that a correct correlation that, kind of the passing game is rising with Nico being healthy?
Yes, sir. So great question, Tom. And you kind of hit on exactly one of my messages that I have for the receivers every week when we get to game prep. We get to the hotel on Friday nights, and then, quick meetings on Saturday mornings if it's a night game. Talk about being the fire spark of an offense, right? It's been since I first started coaching many, many years ago. This is my 20th season coaching, which makes me feel really old, by the way. But for 20 years, most of my career has been with receivers. And that's just something that the receivers coach that I played for when I was playing quarterback, he talked about all the time, was receivers have to be the fire spark of the offense. No matter what style of offense you play or what personnel you use, usually when you look at a successful offense, whether it be throughout a season, throughout a game, or a specific drive, usually something is sparked by a receiver, whether it be a big spring block, a catch and run, a big play downfield, whatever it may be. Usually a receiver has something to do with it, right? And that's still the case here, right? Coach puts up, he puts up the big play chart from the previous game, usually in our Wednesday team meetings. And usually when you look at the big play chart, usually a receiver for either side, usually a receiver has contributed in some way to a scoring drive. A receiver has contributed in some way, either on a spring block on a long run and or a pass play, a catch and run for an explosive play in the pass game. A receiver has done something with it. So to your point, Nico is a big part of that. He obviously made some big plays against Purdue last week, which was great to see. Him getting back in the fold and him getting his feet back under him and getting his juice going a little bit. But more importantly, it gets our offense going. Guys really believe in Nico. He's a very likable guy. You guys have spent time with him. You guys have interviewed him. Very bright, very magnetic personality. So he's just one of those likable guys. And when he's going, we're going as a receiver group. And usually that gets us going as an offense. So that's always my challenge to those guys. And with Nico being the old guy in the room, I can call him old now because he is old. Him being the old guy in the room, I put a lot of onus on him to make sure that our receivers are locked in, but more importantly, we're playing with passion, right? We're aligning right, but we're finishing the blocks, advancing the ball, and playing with passion. And Nico truly loves the game, so that's not much to ask of him.
Scott Dochterman.
If you think you're old for coaching for 20 years, one of us actually covered you while you're at Emporia State in an MIAA game. So there's the old guy from me. I'm an old dude, but kind of, how do you combat some of the discussion on the recruiting trail about Iowa's offense? Because the numbers are the numbers this year. It's an aberration, of course, because of all your injuries. But you've got to be able to tell players to look past that and look to their development. How do you do that to ensure that you even get them on campus, they even look at you, rather than just ignore you?
Absolutely. The first thing, going back to how I was raised, my upbringing with my parents, the truth shall set you free, right? So I address it right out of the gate. Hey, look, like I talked about before, you have to be a unique young man. If you're the type of guy that's driven by stats, touches, targets, highlights, that type of stuff, accolades, personal awards, this ain't the place for you. It's just not. Because quite frankly, you're probably not going to get the targets that you think you should get, right? Either way, whether you're deserving of it or not, every receiver thinks that he's open every play. That's just the nature of our position. We think we're open every play. We should get the ball every play. Obviously, that's not the case, but a good receiver, that's how he thinks, right? So if you're that kind of young man that is built that way, that's taught that way, that's raised that way, this is probably not the place for you. We're a very tight end centric offense here for good reason. We have really gifted tight ends, being Sam Laporta, even before that, before Noah Fant, before TJ, before I got here, the list goes on, right? This is tight end U, literally for a reason. So if a young man doesn't understand that coming in, that you have to love the game of football and you have to love playing the game with your teammates first and foremost, if you can't check those two things off the list, then it's probably not going to work out. So that has been my message to individual recruits. And more importantly, quite frankly, since we're on the subject, my message to parents has been quite the same. Because if we're being honest, I don't want to go down a negative tone, but if I'm being completely honest with you, the bigger problem, in my opinion, in my experience, especially being here at Iowa, has been the parents. It's been the parents. The parents are so driven on my kid needs this, and how many targets my kid gets and all this type of stuff. So the education has to start with the parents. If your individual success or the individual success of your kid is more important than the team success, this ain't the place for you. And I've told plenty of parents that. I've started that message about 2 years ago because of certain instances that have happened since I've been here at Iowa, where things like that have come up. We're in the middle of a game week. Give you a quick story. You guys like stories, right? That's what I was told. Media like stories. So I'll give you a quick story. Big Ten championship week last year. We're getting ready to play Michigan. Really good opponent, obviously. Big game. First time in my career that I've played, coached for a Big Ten championship. So in my mind, it was a big opportunity, right? Wednesday, today, of Big Ten championship week, I get a call from two parents wanting to talk to me about why their son isn't touching the ball more and getting more opportunities. So I spent 40 minutes out of my Big Ten championship Wednesday evening talking to these parents about why their son's not getting more opportunities versus me trying to do everything I can to make sure we're successful for the Big Ten championship game against Michigan. So again, things like that have happened over the years. It's maturity, it's experience, all those things. Some people call it scars. You just kind of learn. And my message has been monitored since, right? I've adjusted my message, and quite frankly, it's about team success. If you're more interested in individual success or the success of your son versus the success of Iowa football, this is not the place for you. So that, first and foremost, it's about truth. It's about being honest and going from there, right? If that turns a kid off, you have your answer.
Kennington.
Coach, you've been speaking a lot about adversity. I would look at somebody like Keegan, for example, who was never injured prior to coming to Iowa, and he's had a series of injuries dating back to the bowl game that have kept him out. How have you seen him deal with that and stay engaged? And, the second part of that question is, what is his potential outlook for the rest of the season?
We're looking for big things out of Keegan. Obviously, we've been looking for him for a while. I understand, I haven't been in front of you guys, basically the whole season. But Coach gives us a briefing on, what you guys have asked and, the general idea of the questions that were asked in his weekly press conferences. And he's mentioned at times that, Keegan's name keeps getting brought up, asked about things like that. But, his process is his process. Everybody is different. So the biggest message that I have for people, being the media, fans, or even people inside of our building, is you can't judge one young man's situation next to another, right? His process is his process. We don't know what's going on inside of his body or what's actually happening. I do know this, though. This young man wants to play football more than anybody else wants him to, right? So he's doing everything he can to get back on the field. And quite frankly, again, I don't want to be negative, but you call me on a good day because I'm being as honest as I can. Quite frankly, you can't hold that against a young man. And I feel like there's certain people out there that are trying to hold it against this young man and hold him to the fire because they haven't seen him this season. I know for a fact that this young man is doing everything he can to get back on the field. Hopefully, he will get back on the field this season. If not, so be it. So be it. It's the way God chose it to be, and we'll look forward to what's going to happen in bowl prep, and God willing, we get to a bowl game, and we'll see what happens in bowl prep. But for now, I know he's working his butt off. He was out there on the field today trying to get better and improve, and he's on the right track. So we'll see. But other than that, obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an athletic trainer. So that's a question better suited for somebody else outside of that.
And John Steppe.
We've seen Sam Laporta out wide a bunch. For you, from the perspective of a wide receiver coach, what about his skill set makes it where he's so versatile where you can put him out wide?
He's really big and strong. He understands route running. He understands leverage when it comes to route running. And he's got natural ball skills, right? And the last piece of the puzzle, which is very unique, especially for a big man, is his run after catch ability. That one play he had against Purdue last week where he's in the boundary and they tried to isolate him on a linebacker. Well, we saw how that turned out. But the most impressive thing about that was after the catch, right? It's one thing to get open on a slant route against press coverage, but it's another thing to carry three dudes 10 more yards, right? That's what makes him so special. And it's not just about the athleticism or about the skill set of things of that nature. It's how certain people are built mentally. And that's the biggest thing that I take away from Sam is he's built different mentally. This guy loves football. I don't know if I've ever seen Sam on the football field without a smile. Even when it's raining, snowing, cold, windy, whatever. I don't know if I've ever said, I know I haven't seen him on a football field without a smile. This guy loves football. And that's my message for anybody. If you're coming to Iowa, you better love football because we're going to put you in some extraneous situations and we're going to test how much you really think you love football. And this guy, I mean, we're seeing the production and the side effects from his love of the game. But it all starts with his passion, his preparation, and just how he practices the game, yet alone how he plays the game. What you guys see is just a small microcosm of how he practices every single day. For every clip that you see in a game, against Purdue or whoever it may be, there's 10 that you can match up from practice and be like, yep, that's the same play he made 10 times in practice. And that's how he is every single day. This guy, I love being around him. He's just one of those guys I love being around. Hopefully, I wish that we can keep him around, for 10 more years, yet alone one more year. We'll see what happens, but I'm just enjoying the time we got with him now because he's awesome.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate your time today. Thanks, everyone. See you on Saturday.
All right. Thank you, guys. Go Hawks.
Thank you.